Guys
Let's see.
and gals,
What do we got
back.
here? Here we go. Here she is, Maria.
Check Maria out.
Matt got a someone to swipe on his
Not bad
Tinder.
looking.
Yeah, she's a little cutie.
I don't
She,
really know how Tinder works.
She's not looking for hookups.
I just know you swipe in different directions.
Oh, she loves travel and road trips.
She loves travel and road trips.
Yes, she does.
So do I.
Dogs or cats?
Photography and videography.
She loves
sure.
photography
No
and
cats.
videography, and I don't know why.
She also loves dogs.
And she also loves dogs. And she
Netflix.
love a hog. I don't know.
Hashtag
We're gonna
wanderlust.
find out
Hashtag
on our
wanderlust.
first date. Okay, that's enough of me singing, Jake. Thank you. I didn't come here to hear
Does she
you
like
sing.
Coachella?
But live though. You're live.
We're
Are we
live.
live?
We're
Are we
not
live?
live, but we're going to be live
Yeah, we will
because
be
guess
live.
what? On corridordigital.com on the Greenlight feature, we
Yeah.
are going to introduce Corridor Live as a concept, starting with the podcast. Once that gets greenlit, then the podcast is going to be live on YouTube and on the website, but only website subscribers are going to be able to comment in the video.
Oh, cool.
And then obviously we can do a little bit more of an interactive element where we can talk to people, answer questions, and not to have it just be a podcast. We can do like all different forms of casting.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that because we can still, we can still take the time like we do with this, but it'll just be more. There'll be more options for us, like
Yeah,
for
wow.
whatever we're feeling that day.
We could have the people judge my Tinder matches.
Yeah.
That would be. We could swipe with Matt. Swiping with Matt.
Yeah, swiping
Say
with
yes!
Matt. Should I swipe right or left?
Just an episode called Swiping with Matt.
Yeah. And we have to give you all of your replies.
Yeah,
You're not allowed.
yeah.
But only based off the information of just the first line of their bio description.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know that she's an outdoorsy gal.
Yeah. So she likes dogs. Yeah.
She loves dogs. Netflix. I love Netflix.
Great.
It's super
Great.
unique
You guys
interests.
we have so much in common. Dogs
do.
and Netflix.
Yeah.
We do.
Dude,
We're
I
kind
love
of like
sleeping,
made for each other, I think.
Netflix, and eating is
And
really one
brunch
of my
on a
favorites.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Drinking water.
Dude,
Yeah.
you like that too?
Yeah, I drink water like a couple times a day.
Are you on Tinder?
I am Tinder. You want to swipe right?
Dude, I mean, we have a lot in common, so.
That's cool.
These guys don't even know which direction to swipe.
We
I
were
don't know.
okay. Why
Somewhere.
are we talking about this? We started on this earlier this afternoon because we were trying to conceptualize like the totality of the Valentine's Day render challenge video that we have upcoming. So we were thinking like, okay, who's the perfect candidate? It's got to be somebody single, somebody who's on Tinder,
Eliminates everyone.
and so it
Except
kind of
for-
eliminates quite a few. And then we noticed like, okay, hey, we've got one candidate. And Jordan's here with the beer.
Yes,
Jordan's
just
here
in
with
time.
Jordan's here with his.
Swipe right on that
You
beer.
accomplished what the Guillotine Channel never did.
Yeah, well, let's see.
So the topic of today's podcast is how do you find a story? I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh, yeah. How
It
do you
sounds
find
a little
story?
bit vague and boring, I'll be honest, as a title, but
Well, this is a great tie-in for that. Because
Yes.
we're literally talking about how we found a story.
exactly. So
That's why I was going into it.
Yeah.
That was
Whoa,
my
dude.
eventually lead-in was gonna. I was gonna.
Wow.
Yeah.
But here's why it's not vague, because if you can find a story in anything, you can captivate people, and once you can captivate people with anything, you have the power of making a wonderful YouTube channel.
Yeah.
It's a superpower that Nick has developed for years. Matt, you've developed it as well for quite a while. You already had the superpower before you joined us. I don't necessarily have that superpower.
Oh hush.
Oh,
Niko.
get out of here.
Get out of
Of course you do.
Jake's got it though. If you've ever seen
I?
one of your ad reads, you would know that Jake has the ability to make a good story out of anything.
Appreciate that. Like today's sponsor, Brilliant.org.
Hey, you're
Oh,
brilliant.
look at that segue. I wasn't even planning that.
And now's that time in the podcast where I tell you about today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is a new sponsor on the Corridor Cast, so be nice, okay? And listen up. Brilliant is a math, science, and computer science based learning website and app. Now, what does that mean? They have interactive learning tools which allow you to fundamentally understand concepts that shape our universe. Do you remember when you were in high school? Hey, maybe you're in high school right now, but I remember when I was in high school and they said, hey, learn these formulas. Well, guess what? I don't remember any of them today. Through this interactive learning, you develop a framework to understand not only the formulas, but then how to apply them to novel problems. When I was scrolling through Brilliant, one course that caught my eye was the Introduction to Neural Networks. Now, not only did the interactive courses allow me to fundamentally understand how these massive data sets are run through these networks, but all of the courses that Brilliant has have interactive sections like this. You master concepts by solving fun, interactive problems yourself, rather than having somebody tell you how to apply a formula. Head on over to brilliant.org/corridorcast to get started for free. If you're one of the first 200 people to sign up, you will get 20% off your annual premium membership. But anyways, back to the podcast.
But really, like, the art of telling a story is a unique one, and it's something that, like, it doesn't just apply like doing it in videos. You can do it in conversation, you can do it in a song. It's like the core things, like, once you can kind of pinpoint them, it gives you this power to captivate people. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about in today's podcast.
Yeah, it's also a topic of Nick's functional filmmaking episode. So I wanted to give people, I guess, just a little bit of like the philosophy behind what that episode is, and then like obviously how we apply it, which led us to today of talking about this stupid Valentine's Day render video. But more on that later.
More on that later, folks. Stay tuned.
More on that later.
More on that later.
I am. Yeah.
Once you swipe, right?
Right. When you swipe right. Right.
Is it?
Wait, you swipe left, right?
No, you
No,
swipe
no.
right.
It's right,
when
left,
it's
right.
good, you swipe right. When you swipe
But you
left,
said.
But what's left after that?
then you swipe left, right.
Wait, which
Oh, okay.
direction are you swiping?
Swiping left is the right move.
So if I swipe this way,
Yes.
same direction that you swipe.
This left swipe.
My left or your left?
No, you have to mirror. No, you don't
I am
mirror.
mirroring
You
you.
don't mirror me. You do the opposite thing. So
Okay.
right, left swipe, right swipe. Right swipe is good. Yes, I want to date you.
This means.
Left swipe is bad. No.
Okay.
No. Wait,
Okay.
you swipe both ways right then.
No.
No,
If you
no,
go no, then you're just screwed. It's just like you're gambling.
Oh,
And
boy.
every match you get, you have to go out with them. That's the rule.
Yeah.
Is it like she loves me?
She loves me not.
I wish
She
they'd
loves
have
me.
that. Yeah, like a digital version of that.
Oh, yeah,
like
the flower?
petal picker.
Yeah.
Some
Pedal
app
picker.
developer just got a great idea.
You know, I'm pretty sure that all flowers are symmetrical with their petal pattern,
yeah.
meaning that they would have even numbered.
Of course.
So
Not necessarily.
not necessarily.
Not
Oh yeah,
necessarily.
that's true. There's 5 petaled flowers
Yeah.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They make them all shapes and sizes.
Pentagons are symmetrical, and they have odd numbers.
That's true. All right. So, anyways, Nick, just give us like top
All right, Nick,
level.
take it away.
No, just give us like top level, like, you know.
Well, let's talk about this Valentine's one as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah,
make a
okay.
story?
I mean-
how do you make a story out of a dating app? Like what's
I
the
mean,
angle of
sometimes the stories just fall into your lap, and sometimes you have to make a story or find a story rather. So, for instance, today we just tackled this problem in our meeting that we had an hour ago.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out what is the story we want to tell with this. Like, okay, last year we did a Valentine's Day render challenge, and that was really funny. And there was a real story. We were all like, hey, we have a couple days. Oops, none of us got Valentine's Day cards. Let's just make one in this challenge. So that was a real thing. But what we did today was more of like, okay, how can we change that? How can we spin it? What tools do we have
Yeah.
at our disposal here? So, and
Yes.
you also want to choose the right story. Which stories do you swipe right on?
So how
left
do you
on, you know?
how do you know which ones to swipe right on?
Well, I mean, that's
have
a
to
good
trust your
question,
gut.
and that's a little bit of what I go into, but more so what I go into in the functional filmmaking episode is how to have a swipe right story or how to have a swipe left story and turn that into a swipe right story. How to make any story into a good story.
How to turn a swipe left into a bride.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it's meant to be a universal like dive into just like how we approach making
Yeah.
our videos. And again, everyone's different, and each one is special. But there are some universal rules and little maxims that we've developed over God, how many years? Many years of
Yeah.
making vlogs and stories and crew videos.
Now,
So
even those, just disclaimer, even those universal truths, if you will, are still kind of subjective to what our filming style is.
Yeah.
But
And it changes.
If you had, I think we should go around. Like, if you had to point them out, like, what would you say? 3 things, like fundamental. Okay, it's gotta.
I mean, you need to have stakes. That's like the main thing I'm talking about. And
Right.
That's what we always focus on. Stakes. What are the stakes, right?
Like prime
Yeah.
rib
And-
or
well, yeah, like
filet
exactly.
mignon.
You gotta have
Oh,
those
man.
juicy
Yeah,
cuts
New
of
York
meat.
cuts,
strip.
man.
But a little bit. I mean, it's the primary rib of storytelling. Today, for instance, talking about this Tinder/Valentine's Day video. It was like, okay, what are the stakes of you guys just trying to make Valentine's Day cards again for your wives?
it's like we already married them.
Yeah, there are. Exactly. It's like,
They
what,
get
my
it.
wife
They
is
get
going to
it.
divorce me for like making a Baby Yoda render? No. Like, there aren't very many real stakes. So that means that we'd have to manufacture some. So it's like, you want to minimize how much you have to manufacture something.
Right.
So that was just like, okay, there aren't any natural stakes being presented here.
Yeah.
Like, so what are some stakes? And then we thought, what if it's making someone a Tinder profile picture instead? Because there's stakes,
Yeah.
you know, you're putting
Yeah.
everything out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And what if it's Niko and Sam making Matt a Tinder profile picture?
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, I think that's a freaking hilarious story. Like, my boss makes me my Tinder
Yeah.
profile
Yeah,
picture.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
and especially because you guys are of a generation where you've never used Tinder.
Yeah.
And that's weird to say even, but like, it makes me feel old 'cause I'm like on that cusp. But like, there will be a lot of, I think, comedy inherently coming from that. Like,
Yeah.
Matt having to teach you guys how to use Tinder so that you can make him something that's crucial for him to use Tinder. Like, so there's like inherent comedy that you can just like hone in on. So we already know. And like, we were starting to get into that in our production meeting about this. And I just had to be like, stop. Like, let's just stop until the cameras are rolling, until tomorrow. We're just not going to talk about this. And here we are. But,
Yeah,
you know.
of course. Yeah, here we go.
So that's kind of, I mean, first of all, it's the whole first part of what that class is how do you choose the story you want to tell? Because there's a lot of ways you could go.
That's a good
There's
question.
a lot of different ways. So
How do you choose the story you want to tell?
Stakes.
stakes,
Mhm,
you do your research, you weigh the stakes, and you
Mhm.
communicate with your subject and get them on board. Make sure it's a story your subject wants to tell too. Because there's nothing more disheartening and exhausting than trying to force your subject to follow a story.
Yeah.
It
Right.
never turns out as good as if they're on board and it's something
Yeah.
that they're motivated by.
Right.
So
Yeah. If you're talking subjects too, I think another like key fundamental thing is having good characters in your
Yes.
stories.
yes,
It's super important to have characters that have like strong motivations.
yeah, definitely.
And we got a pretty strong motivation in this hopelessly single person
Boom.
who needs to get a Valentine before Valentine's.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's like it's starting to affect your work productivity. We're like,
I'm thinking about it all the time. It's all I think about. It's
we
God,
see him. It's like,
February's rolling around.
you
It's
get,
already
this,
here.
you get the shot where it's like Niko peering around the corner and then the punch zooming on Matt's screen.
Dude.
And he's like working on photoshopping his face to like make himself look better in his profile picture.
We should
Dating
open this
myself up a
video.
little.
We should open this video with like that one song. It's like it's showing everyone with their partners opening Valentine's Day. It's
Yeah.
like do 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 do.
Yeah.
It's like Nico's like looking at Ivy's picture and like Matt's just sitting there like, man.
Yeah.
Photoshop all day.
No,
you know,
but
it's probably worth talking a little bit about where like character motivation comes from, though,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a word you throw on a lot when you're talking about stories. But like, what is character motivation? And
interesting.
it comes from objectives. It comes from goals, and that all ties back into the stakes, right? Because a stake is what happens when you don't meet your objective.
Mhm.
What happens when things go wrong? So, if Matt's motivation is to have a Valentine's date, well, it's like, what is the motivation? Well, Matt's goal is finding somebody, and that motivates him to then go and
Yeah.
make a Tinder profile and try to solve this problem. Because if he doesn't solve the problem, then the stakes manifest themselves. He's going to cry alone in the bathroom for a while. I don't know.
A stake without a goal
But you also need to establish the stakes
is
too.
a is a pork tenderloin.
It's not a steak at all.
Yeah.
It really
It was
isn't.
never a steak.
It's only a steak respective to the goal, though. That's
Yeah.
a thing. Like jokingly,
True.
as much as we're talking about, that's a super important thing to point out. Like, you have a goal, and then the stake is like how much you're gonna have to overcome
Mhm.
to get to that
Yeah.
goal, and what happens if you don't.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The
You
stake,
know.
I mean, the stakes
Well-
inform you as to like how emotionally charged are you to achieve your result? How motivated are you?
Yeah.
Because if the stakes are low, I mean, but then again, it's actually not really true. I take that back. Stakes don't have to be big because as we saw in the AI video, a candy bar works fine for motivating.
Yeah, for sure.
If you make a joke out of it, though.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
our
yeah.
extreme reactions made that into an
It's either a joke or it's like the characters that are in your story that matters to them.
Yeah.
Like the
Right.
stakes are really high for them,
They
even though
can-
maybe
Stakes are
as
relative.
an audience member you don't think the stakes are high, from your perspective.
yeah.
Because you see the characters like really caring about, their end goals. That's really what matters.
And that's
You know,
where
it's-
the small amount of directing comes in.
And acting,
yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
Yeah,
And
and
acting,
acting
yeah.
as
Performance.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
You need to translate that passion and that need to succeed and goal into what the audience can see.
Mhm.
So like Ren is super passionate about putting a Nerf dart on a drone, Nerf gun on a drone.
Yeah.
But how do we make the audience as excited? Well, it's not hard when it's Ren. But,
Sure,
you
yeah.
know, for other people who maybe aren't as charismatic or good on camera, you can really have to squeeze it out of them sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Well, you guys solved that problem really well with the drone video. Because imagine that video where Ren goes, I want to put a Nerf gun on a drone. And he proceeds to try to put a Nerf gun on a drone. And he eventually succeeds in putting a Nerf gun on a drone. And he shoots some Nerf darts. And that's the end of the video. Like, that's a boring video.
yeah,
It might seem interesting, but the moment you're a minute into the video, you're like, why am I watching this?
yeah.
It's because it's
Yeah.
missing something.
That video is one of my favorite videos we've ever done.
So how did you
fun.
fix
For many-
that? How did you make it a good video?
So we
Enter Jan.
we
stage
leaned
left.
in. We leaned in, and this is another thing that's covered. But we leaned into the real events that went down.
Yeah.
And part of what's magical about Corridor is that we have a group of characters essentially that are all in proximity to each other. Sometimes magic just happens, and Jan, obviously, I mean, I think he felt that there was a story here, and like obviously, like he's a huge Nerf fan too. So I think there was an automatic.
Well, that's another huge thing
Yeah.
that I don't know if people know is like Jan is perhaps more obsessed about Nerf than anyone I've ever
Yes.
met in my entire life.
Yeah.
Um,
So like those scenes where he's like taking his headphones off and looking up over the computer, like that thing will never fly.
Mhm.
yeah.
That's all real. Like
Right.
that was just Jan doing that, and then we're like, and then it's like, oh, okay, there's our story. There
Yeah.
it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you lean into that.
Yeah.
So then we lean into it with the end battle, which is, by the way, really interesting from a, I think, just like perspective of this is the first actual time we've seen a drone do combat with a human that was really trying to take it down.
Yeah.
And we're actually seeing the superiority that a drone, there's been no other example of like, can a drone with a projectile on it beat a human that really wants to fuck it up?
Right.
Yeah.
And that is like all we have to go
I mean,
on right now.
also there was a piloting, obviously a huge
It's all
piloting
about
element.
it's all about Ren's
it's funny
skill with
that-
it, but it is possible. You could
Right.
actually make a drone with a weapon a feasible battle
Right.
implement.
Yeah.
And
which
so
is crazy.
It's
Yeah.
And Ren
It's
demonstrated.
basically like with Ren's piloting skills, it's just an extension. Like a sword is an
Dude.
extension of the wrist. Like it's just an extension of Ren in that
Yeah.
sense, you know? It's just like instead of his effectual point being close to his body, it's just over there.
Which is crazy because, dude, I mean, imagine the implications of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
mean,
already working
All
on
right,
it, dude.
hard tangent, guys. Here we go.
Hard
Boom.
tangent.
We'll
Uh-oh.
come back. We'll come back. But let's talk about drones that have been weaponized for just one quick
Yeah,
second.
let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
'Cause
Which have
as a
been around for a
filmmaker,
while.
you come up with crazy scenarios all the time.
Yeah.
Like before 9/11 happened, like filmmakers came up with the idea of planes flying into like a U.S. Capitol.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's in I think a Tom Clancy book, if I'm not mistaken. It's like these ideas
In
already
Independence
existed.
Day, they blew up the White House.
Well, that was
with a
aliens shooting it with a
spaceship.
green laser.
Oh, okay. Oh, never mind.
Slightly different.
A little different.
Okay.
But you know the specifics of like how because you sit there and you have to like, how is the bad guy going to do his thing? What's going to be unique about it? What's going to be clever about it? And you end up having to like brainstorm these things. And in doing so, you start to realize like, oh, dang, this is like, here's a way you could really fuck some people up.
Yeah.
And like one of those things is drones. And like, you think about putting something that shoots projectiles on a drone. You don't have to do that. Drones are cheap. The drone itself is the weapon. You could easily weaponize a drone by just putting an explosive on a drone and flying the drone into something.
It happens. In
it happens
Syria,
all the time.
They've been
Yeah.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Syria, they're dropping explosives and it's pretty crazy. Like, and it's weird that we don't really like talk about it much because I feel like, the media and like, there's a lot of these things. It's like, it'd be really easy to do this if people thought about it more, but we just don't talk about it. So it doesn't happen.
Right.
And like weaponizing of drones is one of those things that would be really easy to do, but we just don't talk about it. And like, we even like talked about like, what if we made a video, like, a sci-fi thing or a thriller thing that was one of the things like that happened in it. Or like, we don't really want to give people ideas and like, delve too deep into this, but yeah, crazy.
No, totally. If you're vile enough, you can come up with a way to hurt people in all kinds of different ways. It's a deep, dark rabbit hole that has no end.
You don't need warehouses full of like barrels of chemicals with like
No.
depth charges on them anymore.
No, you don't.
No.
Like that's the thing. People. That's why I'm kind of like. That's why the libertarian in me is like, it doesn't matter what you do. Like people are people, because the law will never stay ahead of people. Like you can legislate and make laws for absolutely everything, but what binds people to live together peacefully is just trust.
Mm-hmm.
And like you trust that when you drive down the road, the person in the opposite lane is not going to swerve into your lane and kill you.
Yeah. I trust that a lot less here, but
Yeah. But like that's that
boys.
happens every single day in every place and time and manner in which people interact. There's just this common
true,
stance. Now, we can say, oh well, if you do that, then this will happen, right? And that helps, but like at the end of the day, it just comes down to that. I mean, most thankfully, most people aren't maniacal.
Yeah, thankfully.
So yeah,
But I mean,
anyways,
drones be scary, man.
But back to the video. So, I think the ingenious thing was you guys figuring out that there's a story here. The story is not necessarily about Ren building the drone. The story is about Ren beating his friend in a contest.
Proving he can do it.
So now there's stakes, right? There's emotional stakes. I need to beat my friend. Why? I don't remember why, but I'll just assume it's going to make Ren happy. He doesn't want to be
What were
one
the
up by
actual
Jan.
things? There was actual.
Wasn't it
if
like
Jan wanted to take it down with an axe?
well, Ren only made one of them too.
Yeah.
And so if Jan actually broke
he,
it,
he wanted
then-
to take it down.
Yeah.
He wanted to destroy it.
Now the other thing to point out here that you mentioned earlier, but I think we need to sync up is the idea of taking what you actually get from both your characters and from your actual circumstances, and then only manufacturing like what's absolutely necessary to take it from point A to point B.
Yeah, just
Like
the
if-
glue.
Yeah, like if you went up to who would be completely unenthusiastic about drones? Like, I don't know.
Jordan.
Jordan maybe? Yeah, like maybe she is, maybe she isn't, but like you take some random person who doesn't fly them, doesn't and you're like, "Okay, so here's what's going to happen." Right? You're going to
Christian
build
would be like, "What?" Or like even me, I'd be like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah. And then you take the antithesis person, the anti-hero Jan, and you're like, "Okay, then you're going to try to take it out." Be like, "Why am I
No, you
doing
can't
this?"
force it.
No,
You can't force
exactly.
that.
And so even though it wasn't like we were sitting around one day and Jan and Ren came to a head.
And they just happened to do this.
It just happened to do it and we captured it on camera. There's still like those inherent characteristics of those people that we pitted against each other to get that story. And so I don't know. Maybe sometimes people are disenfranchised or enchanted. That's what I'm looking for. Disenchanted about like, oh, well, you just made it up. But that's all of storytelling is like taking something that's there and then just going, what if it was like that?
Yeah, that's like exactly. And that's like reality documentary, or it's I don't know what genre we fall into. It's like half reality, half narrative.
It's like a video blog.
video blog kind of. It's like a video.
Do they have a name for that?
Yeah,
It's
no,
not a vlog.
we'll
though.
figure that
It's
out
never
later.
been done before. Whatever it is.
Yeah. You should check out this creator called Casey Neistat.
Is it Casey?
Is it
Yeah.
Neistat?
Yeah.
Something like that. But
Yeah.
he does some really good blogs.
Video blogs.
Video blogs. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he lives in like Chicago or something. But really what it is you want to meet with your characters and get on the same page about that story from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because then you can set yourself up for capturing a real story and
Right.
being on the same page for that. Because like, using Ren's video or this Tinder video, like we could have shot a million different story beats for that. It could have been like, yeah, my motor works, or the shooterizer finally works. And that's like the main clincher. Like that could have been what we're shooting for. And it would still be just as real of a video
Yeah.
and probably with help of some editing be maybe as impactful, but probably not as much. So
Right.
the fact that we decided this is all going to be about this battle, this duel coming up, that the fact that we're all on the same page about that through the week-long process means that I don't have to do much directing because they already know
Yeah.
what we're shooting for. They know the story.
Right.
Everyone's on the same page, and we can let those real moments play out with as little meddling as possible. And like, yeah, like we'll get like talking heads and like pick up shots and
So-
like all that stuff. But
Okay, so what here, I'm typing a comment. Yes, Nick, but what happens when the characters don't do what you expected?
well, either you go with it and that you just roll with it if
Yeah.
it works, or I mean, sometimes you'd have to put your filmmaker hat on
Right.
Mhm.
and get in and like, direct them.
Yeah.
And one of
But-
the most common like questions you get as a director from an actor is, "What's my intention?"
Yeah.
With this line, with the scene, like, why am I doing this? And when you establish like a conflict or a goal in real life, very often you don't get the questions anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can just follow and film it, and something's gonna happen.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it
just
kind of
shows.
does eliminate that question. I mean, there's not many times that, I'm working with Ren and he's asking me, why am I doing this? It's really me asking him, why are you doing this? So I know like how to like explain this to the audience. So it's like, that's the difference. Because
I wake
you're
up
right.
every
Narrative
day and
directing is
ask myself
90%
that
explaining
question.
motivation. Yeah. I was like, why are you doing this, bud? But like, that's just an example of like, if you just find people who are passionate and that's what you base your content around, you're going to have a good time and you're going to have good stories coming from that. Because, again, the best videos are the ones that have true passion igniting the ideas. So like, that's step number one is like, make sure that whoever you're filming or whatever you're filming knows the intention of your story. So that's the first thing we talk about
Yeah.
in the functional filmmaking episode.
Yeah.
Uh,
The intention, right?
yeah. And like just figuring out, it's like the pre-production aspect of the video. So, and then, we kind of take it from there. I mean, the episode follows me making the Avatar 2 video with Sam. And like, we filmed that video while I was actually making that video. So,
You had a person filming a
it's
person
funny.
filming
Yeah,
a
there
person
was like
filming a person.
BTSception because Carmichael, Jordan's filming Daniel. She's filming for Instagram. Daniel's filming for the vlog. Daniel's filming Carmichael, who's filming me, who's
For
filming
functional
Sam.
filmmaking.
For functional
For core crew.
filmmaking, and you're
The
filming
weirdest. Yeah,
Sam
there's like
for
a clip
core-
of this on
core crew.
It's so
The
funny.
human video centipede.
So literally a human video centipede, like this feedback of media capturing going on, this feedback loop.
Never have we ever knocked out so many different videos, so many different channels.
Yeah,
in
that's
one
peak efficiency. Efficiency. But yeah.
Do you remember back in the day we had the like our initial rule set when we were approaching the vlogs and like trying to figure out like here's the rule for how we need to make stories. Do you remember our rule set?
Oh God, I'm sad to say I don't. Not the
so
rules.
so some of them we already talked about.
listen to the rules.
Our guidelines.
They're more like guidelines.
So the first one was, state what you're trying to do, what your goals are, and state what's at stake if you fail. My goal is to make a drone that can shoot a Nerf dart, and if I fail, Jan is going to gloat over me for the rest of his life that he is better than me at Nerf. Whatever. And the stakes don't actually matter as long as they're important to the characters. It can be a candy bar. It can be the end of the world. It only matters if the character is emotionally invested in it. So truly, you can make a story out of anything. But that's only the beginning step, because then you need to establish something like what's in your way, what's going to prevent you from just easily
Conflict.
Yeah, it's like, so then I hit a button and a drone came out and I was done. Like, what's the challenge? What's the problem? Well, it's hard to make a drone. The shooterizer doesn't work. The propellers are imbalanced. The battery's going to die too soon. These are all problems that can prevent me from reaching my goal. And if I don't reach my goal, the stakes kick in.
Yeah.
So you establish the problems, and then you also establish how you plan on surmounting those problems, how you're going to overcome them. And then you watch as the character attempts to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I remember we applied it to anything. Like literally it could be,
Mm-hmm.
I'm missing a file. If I don't find the file, I'm not gonna get the video done in time. So the challenge is I need to find it. But that's honestly a challenge. That's just your goal. The challenge would be, but I only have 10 minutes to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Or the search function doesn't work in Windows. So to come up with a solution, I'm going to try this instead. Like once you start doing that, then the story happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't have any middle to your story. You only have your beginning and end.
It's all
So
about those stakes, man.
Here's what
Literally.
it was. Here's this Troutons. It was goals, stakes, challenges in that order,
Mm-hmm.
followed by the philosophy of show, don't tell.
Yep.
So I know you all heard show and tell, but guess what? It's not show and tell. It's show, don't tell. Because no one wants to hear you tell them about something that you did or going to do. They want to see that play out with respect to the context that you just gave them when you give them the goals, stakes, and the challenges. And that's still pretty much how we do the setups and the payoffs of what we do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always try to do that. That's definitely, and for narrative directing too, always
Yeah.
show if you can, always show.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
like
Or imply.
normally most lines can be shown, not said.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I look
But-
like, Even some of videos that aren't that old, I was watching the PUBG mobile video, and like I jump into the van with you guys, and it's like, man, if we could reshoot that scene. It's like
What did you say?
Just my lines are so drawn out. I'm like, guys, thank you for saving me. Now, let me give you this, and let me give you this piece of information. And it's like there's pauses in between the lines. I mean,
Information
maybe most
dump.
people don't know it, but it's like dumping a bunch of information. I could have said all that in like 2 lines.
I think it's a bit different when you're making internet tailored content. I'm sure there's an element of that. Like you need to really like be more in people's faces with info maybe, and not like take the.
But honestly, I've been watching movies through this lens for a while now, and it's like it's the same thing. And movie editing has changed, To be fair, like now it's like way more to the point. But I think it's worth pointing out, like nowhere in this is the discussion of, and you need to show the emotion. Like emotion almost doesn't matter because the characters are just a vessel for the audience to put themselves in their shoes.
That is so true, and it's like the biggest thing I've learned is like actors don't really need to act. They just need to they just need to do simple tasks, and like you can
Convincingly.
break down those simple tasks so fucking basically, and like that's where you'll get good acting. If they're thinking about the arc of the whole movie, and it's like they're faxing a paper in the scene, which a lot of actors do. They're like, "But how does this tie in?" It's like, no, your sub goal is to load the paper in this bigger goal, which is to send the fax, and the bigger goal, which is to send the Valentine's fax to your girlfriend so she married. Like it's like, but you're only thinking about that one thing in this moment. Like, don't think about the weight of the world right now,
Right.
because you won't. You're not.
And
like,
most of the time when you do something, it's like when I'm saying this sentence right now, I'm not thinking about like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be in a podcast, and then that's going to be part of this, and then it's going to be part of that. Like, no, I'm just reacting to what you were saying, and then giving you something back.
just
No, that's good advice. Like, actors don't need to act. Yeah.
it's just less is more.
You need to react.
really, yeah. Just do.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you've laid out your story points, the audience is thinking about how would they feel in that situation. That's kind of what you want, So your character ends up in a spot where they're not going to achieve their goal. The stakes are going to come rushing home. What's going to happen to them? And then you go, boy, if I was in that situation, I'd feel really nervous. That's what you want.
and then
Like-
you want to fuck with the audience and not give them what they would feel.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Or you just, you draw it out or you put a
Yeah.
twist on it or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's, acting's important, but it's almost like being a puppet. And I'm sorry to all the actors listening to this podcast, but it's almost more important to be a puppet to convey information than it is to like be authentic and like give deep emotions. And that's not true for every story by any means. But like, if you're going to be crying on a scene, usually it's because your character should be crying in this situation, not because we want to see you in pain.
Yeah.
It's just you're just being a puppet. This is what the character would be feeling.
That's why Ryan Gosling, I think, is a good actor.
Yeah,
Because there's just enough not going on where the audience
Sure.
can put themselves into those eyes that are just staring off into the distance. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's just enough of that disconnect where it's like, okay, I can actually like put myself in that moment of just like wonder.
He's
Yeah,
got that
you.
Clint
Yeah.
Eastwood school of thought.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like him,
But like
him and
he's
Tom
not
Hardy.
doing much.
Yeah.
He doesn't
like-
need
Well,
to.
it's also like he's supported,
Looking
or
around.
any actor is supported by the craft of the film.
That
you know?
too. That
In
too.
that, like, for example, like the fax thing, the fax scenario, right? If you want him to be thinking about his girlfriend while he's sending the fax, well, what do you do? I mean, you don't
Yeah.
need
How
to
do
see
you
that
show
in the
that?
performance necessarily. You need to cut to a shot of his girlfriend or like what he's thinking about. If that's the kind of story you want to tell, it's like that Hitchcock thing where it's all
Oh, yeah.
about the
It's all about little moments.
it's all
Tiny
about those little moments
cut together.
Yeah, and how you cut them together and how you tell your story.
There's also that Russian filmmaker that did the psychology experiment where maybe it wasn't a Russian filmmaker. I can't
It's
remember.
Hitchcock was I think that's what you're talking
It's
about.
like where you show some imagery and then you show a person's blank face.
Yes, yeah.
I believe it was a psychology experiment actually. And the people would write down what that person was feeling. And so it's the same picture of a person's face every time, but depending on the image shown before, people would be like, oh, that man, he's lost in sorrow. Oh, he's trying to hold back laughter. He's thinking about when he was a child. Like they're applying all of that just by showing an image and showing the person looking,
Yeah, sure.
theoretically looking at it.
Yeah, it's that emotion association
Man,
where it's
that's
just like it doesn't
so-
really matter. Like your inner thoughts are important for you as an actor, just to like really get into your character. But really, at the end of the day, it's about editing. It's about like what you
Yeah.
cut together and how you weave that story.
And story, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like as long as you give the audience facts, like, here is a car crash and 2 people died. Boom. Here I'm playing it out in front of you. It's a movie. Boom. You watch a car crash. Cut to a person watching it. They don't need to act. All you need to do is cut to the person watching it, and immediately the audience goes, okay, what is that person thinking? What are they feeling? What's going on?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's all you have to do as a filmmaker to tell your story.
Imagine this. Okay, there's like 3 images. There's like one image of children playing. There's one image of like an impoverished person, and then there's one image of like a wedding.
Mhm.
And in between those images, you cut to an emotionless image of somebody else.
Yeah.
As if they're watching that.
Sure.
But they have the exact same expression, use the exact same footage each time. If you go children playing, emotionless person, what do you think? What's wrong with them? Impoverished person,
What do those
emotionless
children
person.
do?
They lack empathy.
Mhm.
Wedding, emotionless person. Are they not happy about this?
He's probably single.
He's about
Each
to say,
one,
"I'm
yeah,
Jack."
each one of them brings
Hasn't
up
swiped enough.
3. Each one of them brings up 3 different emotions that we perceive onto that person just because of the image that came before it. It has nothing to do with their image. So think about that when you're like consuming, not just like entertainment, but think about that when you're consuming information about the world and what other people are telling you about the world. Like, it's like, what was the information they gave me before this? What was the headline? What was the image that came with it? What was like, because that's all. If you think the news media doesn't do that, like
Oh, God.
they're
Of course
like
they
the
do.
best at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just interesting how like the same philosophies apply to like entertainment and like stories that we want to utilize to like inspire people to enjoy, not just enjoy our stories, but like do what hopefully we're inspiring people to like do what they want to do in life.
Mhm.
And then also how that can be used as a tool to manipulate too. It's
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that's why
It's powerful,
the
for
idea,
sure.
the idea of the empathy machine being like film, or just moving picture in general still applies. It's just funny. There's so much of it now. I don't know if we think about that, but
That's
Definitely,
crazy.
yeah.
definitely watered down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely just there is so much oversaturation. But yeah, I mean, all those principles are somewhat applied to the stuff we do
Yeah.
on the crew channel with the vlogs and, you know, experimental videos and stuff still. Even more so now that we're a little bit more like, it's a little bit less free form
Yeah.
in,
Mm-hmm.
not in the actual like events of what happens, but like now that there's so many more people here and it's not just like 6 guys sitting around in a studio with Carmichael filming, you know.
Which was only like 2 or 3 years ago. By
That was
the
only
way.
a couple of years ago.
That's so
But,
crazy.
I mean, you know, people always say like, hey, why don't you guys do all the vlogs where you're just, you know, following us around everyday life in the studio? And it's like,
Yeah.
there's so many reasons for that. But one is that magic can't be recreated now. Because the only reason we were able to do like 2 stories cutting back and forth together every other week or every other day was because there was literally like just enough people, like 6 people doing their own thing was
Yeah.
just enough to like, and it wasn't too big to hinder that,
Right.
but it was enough for like one guy, Carmichael, and then eventually me once we started growing
Yeah.
to like cover all that stuff, everything that was happening. Like everyone had something going on at all times and that would feed the machine, you
Right.
know, of stories that we were telling.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different now, I feel, in that like once you start adding more gears to the machine, if you start pulling out a gear, it will derail everything. So like we just have to be more tactical about which gears we pull, how they intersect.
Yeah.
And Daniel, like you might say, well, Daniel's making vlogs, right? But like you'll see the stories he's telling are also more put together than what we like.
Way
they're
more
also
so.
it's a totally different kind of video.
Yeah.
But I think that's mostly from Daniel's artistic like vision, but also I think it's just like you have to be a little bit more tactical and a little bit more have that producer hat more when
Yeah.
you're filming around here these days.
And we used to film. I mean, look, as much as the old original vlogs are, as much as they have a special place in my heart, like not a lot of those are that entertaining. Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
I mean,
it's like 30, like some of those got like 30, 40,000 views because it's just us like fucking around, you know? And it's like, yes, that's it. That's when we started to be like, hey, why aren't these getting views? You know,
Yeah.
why don't these have like more interest? And we're like, oh, it's probably because in this one that has 100,000 views, there's like a goal. And it's like, maybe
Yeah.
we should add goals
Oh yeah,
to
okay.
the things that we're doing. Yeah. But that's how you do it. Like, how else would we have known? There's no school for this.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh,
Vlog school.
yeah.
No,
Um,
for sure. I
dude.
mean, there's like you have that idyllic like sense, I think, when you watch the vlogs that like the stuff's just always happening, and like
Yeah.
we captured that, and that was the reality of it. And like it's still a magical place. I'm not saying the magic's gone. I'm just saying like I feel like the videos have gotten so much better because we've been able to just hone in on all the good parts.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I know like, well,
You chisel
I thought it was
down-
good when it was just like slice of life, like fine. But like same time, like you were saying, looking back on those videos, it's like if you wanted to boil down one of those videos to someone, what do you show them? Like I would constantly find myself being like, this video is dope. I'm gonna show like my friends, my family, and I'd like open the video and then like half of it is something they don't give a crap about, and it's like, oh no, just skip back to that, and then it's like, okay, oh that's the sponsor segment, skip past that. And it's like, and then I show them this little chunk, and they're like, what?
Right.
But that's everybody else besides the croutons.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you know, so like I'm just we get to still like keep those cool experiments and stories, and like have people actually on a wider scale care,
Yeah.
which is dope.
It's
Like-
refining it.
Yeah.
It's refining it and refining it.
Um,
And then when we do bring something out into the ocean of internet content, we're like,
Well, it actually makes
"Ye
a splash
humble
now.
viewers,
Yeah.
look at the refined gold which we have found for you.
This nugget.
It is pure and honest. Let it be."
Yeah. So I think it's a positive change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We found a good thing here.
And that's all from focusing the story, right? Whereas like before you were kind of
I think it's
jumping back
focusing the
and forth.
story. I mean, we've also, as Jake can speak to, we used to do a lot more like DIY craft stuff. I think it's focusing in on the niche that we're like,
Right.
we have to pigeonhole ourselves a bit. I
You
feel
do.
like,
That's
which
worth
is
talking about a
yeah,
little bit.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
we would
take it away.
have, yeah, if we would have gone down the path of like continuing the DIY stuff, like that really would have required me to like build out an entire other arm of the company.
Not saying it can't happen, man.
Because you look at like, what's that dude in Montana? Alex Steele, or is that a porn guy? I don't know. Like, there's a dude.
Wouldn't
No,
know.
there's a dude out of Montana who's like a metal fabricator, and he's actually from the UK, but he wound up in Montana, and he's got this whole workshop, and it's like every
Sounds
day
dope.
he's like working on all kinds of insane DIY stuff, and swords and like hammers and like. God
I've
only
seen
knows.
he does all the medieval weapons. And
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I've seen this stuff.
And so I was inspired a lot by a lot of what he was doing, and I was like, man, this would be cool and this would be great. And we were coming up with like good storylines to follow through on that. And I think the epitome of it was the chainsaw video. Like we finally like
Yeah.
nailed it. And then the guillotine stuff was
build,
great.
yeah, that was some of the best Jake build shit content.
But the
dude.
thing about those is that it's when you gotta go for, you have the elevator pitch. It's like, look, everyone knows that YouTube's a platform. Da 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 da.
Hey, what's your channel about?
Exactly. Exactly. Like you only have that amount of time to capture someone's attention. And like, yes, once their attention has been captured, you can tell a greater story, but still to get them there from start to finish, from like the 15 seconds that you have to the 15 minutes that you have, you got to be, rule number one with entertaining people is don't waste people's time.
Yeah.
Like you gotta do that. And it's just with the skill sets that you guys have on the post front, like the actual ability to render and create things with computers is like a completely different skill set. And obviously the rest of our content is tailored to that. So like going down the road of doing heavy DIY stuff is just not, it doesn't fit with the rest of the narrative.
I mean, that was
you
just
know?
one of the branches. Like, there's so many.
Right,
Different, we
yeah.
had a magic video, which is an amazing video. Don't get me wrong, that's amazing, Brian Markinson. Shout out. But I mean, hey, like, check out this magic video on the channel. We did VFX too, and we built a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And
He
people are
built
like,
a
we're one-stop shop
welcome to
for
Corridor
chainsaw
Crew. He built a
magic video
chainsaw. He does magic, and that guy did effects. All right, on to the next one, guys. See you in a day and a half.
So tomorrow we're gonna go to the ocean and look at some fish.
Yeah, and then imagine. Oh, and by the way, before that, we're gonna go to the park and play aero golf.
Yes, dude. That's
And
right.
I mean, that was an amazing thing to have.
Yeah.
Because we just like, but it was also like, we were just mining for
So
and
imagine-
back to the whole game of life thing, another random tangent in the channel, which is amazing. But like, we were just looking for what's our niche.
Yeah.
Because right now,
Imagine
have
if
one.
you
We didn't
listened
need
to a
one.
band like that.
yeah,
And
like
you're
a different
like,
genre
oh,
every
dude,
song.
I really love fucking Corridor Crew music.
Dude.
And they're like, what's that? What do they kind of music do they make? And you're like, well, they do a little bluegrass and a little progressive rock and a little EDM and a little lo-fi.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? So what songs should I listen to? And you're like,
Kind of sounds like an awesome band.
I don't know.
Let's do it. Let's corridor band.
diverse group of
It's-
people.
It's worth mentioning we don't like. This is something we've very much acknowledged and worked into our strategy, but we're not necessarily going, we're only doing this one thing.
Yeah.
Like, we still have that variety. We're just a lot more measured about when it reaches prime time and gets put in front of, a million people on Corridor
It's
Crew.
because, dude, like we've been raising our own ceiling, and now we got to build more stairs to get there.
Yeah.
Seriously, like
there's
yeah.
I know it'll shift eventually. Like the winds of taste
That's the beautiful part.
shift. And as an artist, you need to be open and receptive to that.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, no offense, Harley, but epic mealtime. Like you can't just produce the same. I love those guys, but like they've produced the same video for the last 12 years,
Sure.
pretty much. And it's like,
It's easy to fall into that
Yeah,
comfort.
I don't ever want to do that. Like, no offense, it works for them
No, I
and it
mean,
works
it
for other
does.
people, but
Yeah.
like I just at the end of it, I know the winds of change will come and we'll have to, you know, a shift in the wind foretells a change in the weather, you know, and we'll have to do something else and like up our game in another way. And that force of life causes you to be a better artist at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a, I guess, a philosophy behind things going viral. And you can phrase this in different ways. What it really boils down to is someone with a unique perspective can share that unique perspective that only that person can have on something that's a common experience, you will end up with interest. So this is a different aspect of storytelling. Now we're getting into like information, but you know, it's kind of like the whole, you know, professional rock climber, you know, breaks down wall climbing, rock climbing scenes from movies. You know, so only that one, like maybe another professional rock climber could talk, but like only professional rock climbers could come in and break down a rock climbing scene from a movie and be like, this is what they're doing right, this is what they're doing wrong, and you're interested because that person's a professional. And it's a similar thing, like, you know, Stuntmen React. Like we might be able to do an episode or two of Stuntmen React without an actual stuntman on the show, but beyond that, like we have to have a professional stuntman because they are a very unique individual with a very unique point of view that can talk about a common experience, which is, say, an Avengers movie. Right. You know, everybody's seen an Avengers movie except for Clint.
We'll work on that.
But not everybody can sit down and be like, okay, so here's how they did that stunt in Avengers. And, you know, I've seen that popping up all over YouTube. You know, a doctor giving insight into, you know, a unique medical case that only a doctor can give an insight to. Or, you know, I can go on forever. You know, an artist giving insight to, you know, and so on and so forth. But
why do you think people like those videos?
Well, people like learning, and like really at the end of the day, you're only really going to learn something new if the person talking to you and sharing that information is somebody who's an expert in the thing they're talking about. You know, like even on this podcast, we see that happen. Like the one where we talked about the Luke Skywalker deepfake, that podcast outperformed all the others. And we have podcasts where we just shoot the breeze and talk about what we're interested in. But, you know, like I'm not a professional video game designer. If we talked about video games, you know, it might be fun. It might be fun to hang out and like have the context, but you know, it's not going to go viral. No one's going to need to tune in to see what Niko has to say about, you know, The Last of Us 2. Like, who cares?
Well, okay. So on that note, if you go back, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but if you go back and watch old Joe Rogan podcasts, like the really early ones, it's literally like him and his buddies just effing around. Effing around, saying like stuff that he could not say.
Which
now.
they probably quote him on all the time. Right?
Yeah. And then you can see over time he began to refine his process. Same exact thing. Like he began to understand like, oh, okay, like when I do this, like people are more receptive to it. When I do that, people aren't. When I have these types of people speak about these types of things, it's more interesting to more people generally. Like as a creator, you're gonna recognize those things and you're gonna track them and pay attention to them because that's gonna help you inform. Hey, people are responding to this. Like if you didn't do that, you'd be a bad artist. You know.
Yeah.
And so I just like. I don't know. It's interesting to see how that.
I mean, it's why we're doing this podcast. How to Make a Story Out of Anything, featuring Nick Laurent.
Right. Well, it is, because we were like, hey, we kind of knew this about the podcast. Like, obviously, the ones where we focus more on what the common niche of the content is across all of our content. Like, they tend to people tend to tune into them more. Yeah. And so we just thought, well, let's keep going in that direction because that's what people want to hear us talk about. So
well, like we'd seen little clues too in the past. Like we'd released a couple of videos where it was like we hadn't quite like made the full mental connection to VFX artists react. Like we did like the why do muzzle flashes in movies look weird or like you know, and that was like. But like it didn't quite like get that spark going. Like, we're like, oh, people seem to like when we explain things. And then it's like we never did anything. We're like, how do we do a video about explaining things? But we never thought to just like do a video explaining things. And like it just I mean, I don't know how it took us so long to be honest, but like
because it came, you don't just want to sell out to everything that has potential either.
Yeah.
Like you don't just want to show up and go, oh my god, that could work, you know. And
Well, it
then it's
wasn't
like,
just the
what-
potential though. It was like we were adding our voice to the Sonic meme, you know,
Yeah.
which was a relevant thing. So it was like that was just like we felt the call.
Yeah.
And it was a natural thing, which I think speaks to it.
The thing is, I
You
think
know,
in a world where
not being
VFX
that.
React didn't happen, we wouldn't have those videos. We'd still have the same. I feel like the same midweek videos are called. I mean, they come out on Sundays now. We still have the same other set of videos. I think that we're in now. I feel like the same refining process
Yeah,
would have happened.
definitely.
We'd still be doing the satisfying renders, the Luke Skywalker deepfakes, like because that's the path we were already on. Before we
Yes.
started VFX Artist React.
I just wonder like how that would. I think we would still be kind of a mixed bag channel, which I don't think would have taken us on the same trajectory.
I agree.
Because like that was hurting us, even though it's like some of my favorite videos are the random like crafting videos or something. Like on YouTube, I think that consistency is key. Like when you order a National Geographic magazine, you don't want to get
dude,
fucking
I have
People
a
magazine.
small,
Yeah.
I have a small like tear out of my eye.
Dude, I
right
know.
now.
Well, no, the thing is, it's not all positive because now those videos we don't get to make. And like, like we were talking about, we have this knife video that we started shooting. Like, will it ever get done? I think it will.
Dude,
I think we
that
can.
knife video's never getting done, son.
For
Not
when
on
you have your
Core
sixth
Crew,
kid.
not on
No,
Core
when you have
Crew.
your sixth kid.
I mean, hey, look, like
that's the landmark.
in like 5 years, like, dude, honestly, the whole thing could be different.
Yeah.
And it could be like, well, guess what? I am gonna make this knife video because now this is interesting. But
Yeah.
obviously, the story that we tell isn't gonna be exactly the same.
It all comes
gonna
down
be
to
different in some
I think
way.
if the story's there, we can still have those videos on the channel.
Well, that was my main thing. Is like when we shifted to more VFX and filmmaking content. My
Yeah.
main thing was like, look, the reason why we call it Corridor Crew is because if it's related to what the crew is
Yeah.
working on, then it's relevant to the channel, which was the thing that we lacked with Corridor Digital. Like it was all about singular
Mhm.
perfect experience, which is cool, but like we also had to attach it to some other form of relevancy that wasn't us. And so as creators, you don't necessarily, especially on YouTube, you don't want to put yourself in a position where your entire dependency is to make it relevant to something else, not to the things that like inspire you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the main thing. If we can keep that, I feel like it's always relevant.
Yeah.
Because it's the things that we're passionate about and things that we're creating. Now it just so happens as we've spun up more and more content that's related to expanding the realm of visual effects and filmmaking.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to attract more and more people who are into that, not only just personally and within the company, but then also the viewership. So obviously, now fortunately, the realm of computer frontier is vast and
Business is booming.
is booming. So it's not like we're at the other side of like a, something. So
Well, I think that was a discovery for us that we made too. We didn't know that people wanted to see how visual effects are made because we actually thought the opposite. To be honest,
Yeah.
our philosophy, which you were very stringent on, was no tutorials.
yeah,
Like me and Carmichael would want to like slip in a little tutorial here and there. Like, hey, what if we just like did a little? And you're like, no, they don't do well, which is true, unless you're like Andrew Kramer.
But that's a whole different type of content.
For sure, but like tutorials don't pay. So we kind of wrote off the fact that people wanted to learn about VFX.
Yeah. To defend myself just a little bit further, like,
Oh, shots fired, baby.
Let's go.
Niko hates Andrew Kramer.
That's a headline for you right there. That'll get views.
so I do want to be specific
And we
here.
do a little bit.
So it wasn't. It was definitely no tutorials, but it wasn't no teaching. It was
Yeah.
don't sit down with a program and start telling people what buttons to click
Sure.
because that's not interesting. That's not a story. Like teach me stuff. Like teach me what makes a good muzzle flash. Teach me what makes good CGI, but don't do a tutorial on
Yeah.
it. So. Teaching can be fun. Learning can be fun. It can be, I love teaching. I love sharing my knowledge, but like, learning is also great. It's super fun. Getting entertained and educated at the same time, edutained is great. But, we're not making textbooks for people,
Right.
you know?
So that was a discovery for us. Like, oh, like we can make this fun and educational
Yeah.
and
yeah.
entertaining.
Yeah.
And it also still kind of follows the guidelines that you set up, where it's like the stuff still is not like we're not just sitting down at a computer and
Yeah.
just telling people literally word for
Yes.
word how to do it. It's more like the core fundamental principles of
10-hour
what it is,
live
yeah.
stream of how we made the up video. Which, by the way, on Sunday, or probably on Sunday.
No, on Sunday.
On
Sunday.
Let's commit.
We're releasing the scale of up effectively, which is how many balloons would it take to lift the house from up. I mean, I know other people have done this, but you haven't seen it like this.
Yes.
You haven't seen it.
This is an
haven't really
opus.
seen it.
This is Ren's opus right here.
It
Yes.
is.
He would be in this podcast if not for the fact that
He's
he's cranking
Yeah,
on it right now,
Yeah.
trying to get it done.
he was supposed to sit right here.
Yep. That was gonna be
But I think
Yeah.
we made another good one based upon
Dude, I'm excited
the
for this
idea of telling a story
That's right.
out of anything.
Are
So
you
I
about
hope you
to
guys
sing?
enjoyed this podcast.
He is. He's
One.
about to sing.
And,
Playing us out.
I'm
playing
gonna
us
play
out.
I guess we're done.
Is there more you want to talk about?
No, you take it away. Hey, if you guys want to see what 30 million balloons looks like floating through a city, check out this Sunday's video.
Ooh.
How many balloons would it take to lift a
I'm
house from
sensing a
up?
little millennial whoop coming on. Oh, hey,
Also, my name's Matt. If you want to find me on Tinder, please match with me.
I bought a stock in GameStop.
I need your love.
It ran up a lot.
Doja.
I was wondering if I should hold at 4,000. Then they came along and said it's not gonna be long before this whole thing goes crashing on down. So I got my shares and I brought them to the market. And they said, son, it ain't worth what it was. We don't like it. And now I'm sitting on 25 shares of GameStop. I don't know what to do. Oh, what to do.
Man, this song, pretty good.
It's sad, man. Sad song.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Consider
too true.
subscribing if you're not. Thank you so
Subscribe.
much.
Subscribe.